Welcome back to the Big Small Business Show. And once again, we have what seems to be a regular at the Big Small Business Show with Rui Marto. He's director, Marto Lafitte and Associates Incorporated. I always love saying that, Incorporated. And today we're talking about actually something quite trivial for some, but actually something can trip you up if you haven't done it properly, and that's registering your company properly. What I see often with businesses is we come up with a name. We don't even check if that name is available. We start trading. Okay. Then somebody says, have you registered? Because they want an invoice, and then we rush off, and then we work out that we can't use that name, so we use some other name trading as, and then later on in the business, a month, a year later, we realize that actually we are still not running a legal entity, and that causes all sorts of havoc. So to take us through what we need to actually have in place in order to have a legal business entity is Rui Marto. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be back. Thank you for inviting me.
Right, so I want to be legal. What do I have to do?
Well, you gave a great example, and I've dealt with a number of matters where that exact thing has happened, where people have traded for sometimes years using a trade name which they haven't reserved. And what happens then is that you get sometimes multinationals, and I'm not even talking about local, I'm talking about overseas-based companies, some of which don't even have an office locally. And they've got attorneys, usually these patent and copyright attorneys, whose job it is to scour the registration lists for businesses that are utilizing a name which might be not even necessarily the same, but similar. And they don't even usually respect that it has to be within their sector. Sometimes these businesses could be doing something completely different, and you then receive a 7-page letter from one of these big firms telling you of doomsday.
I've got exactly that example. We had on the show, we had a lady called Stephanie who had a company or has a company called Jack Rabbit Chocolate. And she's told me that Jack Daniels, the alcohol company in the US, sued her for the name Jack in Jack Rabbit.
Yes.
And the way that they solved that was she had to just say that she would never sell anything with alcohol. Okay, but they came after her.
Well, that's the thing. And I think one way to attempt to prevent that is exactly to then, when you are registering your company, do a reservation of name. It's one level of protection, at least, that assists you. It's not necessarily a guarantee, but at least it assists you in terms of confirming that the name, certainly locally, at least is available and you won't run into that. And you can imagine that if you've been operating, think of signage, think of all the documentation that's got your name, business cards, etc. Now, if you're going to be changing your name and you created the goodwill around that business, now suddenly you have to completely change your name, and it's almost like you're now a startup all over again.
Yeah. So what else do we have to have?
Well, then you register, you'd have to then register your company. So part of the registration of the company is you start with the reservation of name, and then you register your company with the CIPC. When you register,
can I do that online?
You can do that online, and or you can go through either an attorney, an accountant, various service providers that offer that as part and parcel of their services. But you can do it yourself, and you would then set out what the shareholding is. There's a new requirement in terms of which you need to set out the shareholding of the business, which wasn't a requirement prior to this year. So you'd set out what your shareholders and who the directors are of the business. And as an automatic occurrence as part of the registration is that then you are automatically registered with SARS for income tax. However, you then still need to register on e-filing system. So that's not done for you. And it also doesn't include any VAT registration if it's required, and we can chat about VAT in a moment. It's important then to be able to deal with all the formalities in respect of registrations with SARS. So if you are going to be employing people, you want to be registered for pay-as-you-earn, PAYE, in respect of your employees, as well as UIF, the Unemployment Insurance Fund. That would be crucial.
And if you don't?
If you don't, then you don't comply, and there are penalties that can ensue. Not paying over any UIF is a criminal act as well. So there can be some serious consequences.
Let's go to the VAT side, because I see many businesses actually make the fatal mistake of actually messing with VAT. and it's actually criminal. Am I correct to withhold VAT? It's not your money.
Correct. So I think the important bits to know about VAT is that it is compulsory to register for VAT if your business has done a turnover in terms of taxable supplies of above R1 million per year. If you're doing under that, then you can volunteer to register. But to volunteer, you have to there are certain requirements that you have to meet, where you have to show a minimum amount of turnover that is going through your business in order to do so. But like I said, it's compulsory if you are hitting the 1 million threshold, and you have to then register for VAT within 21 days of hitting that threshold.
Okay, so let's go to the comment I made. You charge VAT, you keep VAT, you don't pay over VAT. It's criminal, right?
It's a criminal act. You might as well send an invitation out for an audit and for then legal processes to follow thereafter.
PAYE, is that also, if you hold PAYE, is that also criminal?
So if you're deducting PAYE and you're not paying it over, again, that's not your money. So also.
And so I want to push on what criminal means. It means that if SARS then finds you guilty, what happens?
You're then charged, and you're charged in the criminal court. So you would then have to defend yourself, bring whatever defense if you have. But ultimately, we're talking about...
and I don't have the money anymore is not a defense.
Certainly not, unfortunately. That certainly won't help. And then it's a question of either a fine or prison time, or both, depending on how serious.
And I just want to, I'm sorry to keep pushing here, because I just see this a little bit too often, is that if I now have been found guilty in a criminal case, I've got basically a mark against my name. Okay, it's recorded somewhere.
Correct.
Right.
So you'll be noted then having a conviction against your name. So any search that are done and any future positions which may require a clear criminal record, then you won't be up for. You can't then be a director in a company as well. So there are some huge consequences resulting from that. The other point I wanted to make is, don't forget, in this instance, that the company may be the one not paying over, but there could be recriminations for the directors in a personal capacity, since if they had knowledge, and depending on the degree of involvement, the directors in the personal capacity could be charged, and they're the ones that go to jail.
Especially in a small business, because it's very hard to argue.
Distance yourself, exactly.
Okay, so Rui, thanks for that insight, and sorry to drag that out, but I've just seen quite recently, I've seen an entrepreneur actually thinking that they were clever by not paying over VAT, using it for cash flow, because they needed it, and they landed up having a criminal case, and actually they didn't go to jail, but they certainly have got a mark against their name, and it's had huge repercussions for them. So if you are one of those entrepreneurs out there that's thinking that this is not so important, please don't. It's very important. Pay over your VAT and your PAYE. Don't become a criminal. Yeah, you heard it here on the Big Small Business Show.